Hey there, Eric again. Again, I'm going to be solo on this one because this is the somewhat delayed part two of series on the abuse crisis in the Catholic Church. This is also going to be considerably shorter, FYI, mostly just because of the time. It's already late night, but I really wanted to get something out to keep this going. Um, if you missed the first video that I did last week, go back and watch that. That gives you all of the gory details, and you'll definitely get a sense of how I feel about this whole thing. Yeah, obviously not happy with the way it's being handled, and yeah, but I go into a lot more detail on all of that in the previous video. Today, I want to start looking at why this seems to be happening to the Catholic Church more than it is anywhere else. And I use the word seems for a reason, as you might imagine. And the reason is that, statistically speaking, it's honestly, it's not that much more, if at all more. In fact, I remember when the abuse crisis really started to come to light back in the early 2000s, all the studies were showing that actually, if anything, it's still below the general population. However, still, you don't see this cropping up. You don't see this cropping up so much in, say, the Christian Reformed Church or United Church of Christ or, Lutheran Church, whatever. It's like, okay, so statistics aside, let's look at it kind of in that context. Most people can't think of another institution that has this association with it, and that's what I want to look at. Not so much the statistics of the general population versus priests in the Catholic Church and all of that, because for one, it's not. It kind of misses the point. Because it shouldn't happen here at all. It shouldn't happen anywhere at all. But if anything, it really should not happen within any church, much less the Catholic Church. You would think, if the claims she makes about her are remotely true. However, I think, and this is this is the biggest, the ultimate, the meta reason, if you will. But I'll get down into more practical, I guess, more concrete, more tangible reasons here, if not in this video, in subsequent, in the next one that I do in this series. Because like I said, this is going to be short. It's only going to be about 15 minutes or so. Anyway, the meta reason is that I believe the church's claims she makes about herself are true. That it is the one true church founded by Jesus Christ. And that means she's got a big target on her back, to put it bluntly. This actually, well, it's not the first person to make use of the argument, but prominent Twitter personality, the redheaded libertarian, she got this from her priest, and I've heard it elsewhere, essentially. But the point is that if the church is what she says she is, if she is the one true church founded by Jesus Christ, through whom his grace flows out into the world, thanks to his gift of the Eucharist, then the devil really, really, really wants to take her down. If you have got people walking around in collars saying, hey, when I forgive your sins, when I perform Mass, when I do a baptism, I'm acting in persona Christi, which means I'm acting like in the place of Christ with his full power and authority. If you were the devil, you would be trying to corrupt these people a lot more than you'd be trying to corrupt, the pastor at the non-denom church down the road. So honestly, that's the meta reason that the devil, frankly, really wants to take down the church. Big time. And obviously, I don't believe he can do that. The gates of hell will not, prevail against the church, as the as the scripture says. And of course, as many have pointed out, those gates, those are not a defensive weapon. That's defense. That means the church is supposed to be on the attack. However, we are where we are. And the devil certainly seems to be successful at least taking a lot of people down with him. And as I said, that's the real meta reason here, that the devil wants to discredit the church as much as possible. And let's face it, that winds up discrediting even the very concept of moral authority. Because if there's one thing that I think, especially any traditionally minded, any more orthodox Protestant will acknowledge, is that the Catholic Church has done, at least in terms of doctrine, done a better job of holding to a lot of things, especially in the social sphere, than literally any large Protestant congregation could boast of. And obviously, I'm talking about things like contraception, abortion, homosexuality, all of that. All of that stuff in the social sphere. The church has done a much better job of holding to, again, in terms of doctrine. I'm not talking about the practice of individual Catholics, priests, or bishops, but as far as her teaching, she has remained steadfast in the face of a lot of societal pressure. And so when the devil goes and successfully corrupts a number of priests, that discredits the church's moral authority on those and any other issue, really. Although, well, I was about to go on a tangent about the way the media has been covering this, but I'm going to put that off for now. Now, none of that is, of course, to say that a priest or bishop should be saying, well, the devil made me do it. Of course not. No. That's not the way this works. There's influence, there's encouragement, essentially, but you can't make anyone do anything. So ultimately, all these things do come down to the priest's choices, and they are to blame for their actions. Let's make no mistake about that. Okay, so that's that again. I repeat myself. That's the meta reason. What about some other ones? Well, let's go ahead and look at, before I do wrap this up, and looking at my notes just a moment. Let's take a look at the most obvious one that people like to go to, and that's celibacy. I mean, I've had people say to me, it's because they don't allow married priests, and that's why this is happening. And this goes back to the early 2000s, when all of that was happening. And it's like, no, actually, this has literally nothing to do with it whatsoever. And why? Well, think about it. If you go through a spell where you're not having sex for a while, do you suddenly start looking at kids? If you're, I don't know, if you're in your 30s and you go through you don't have sex for a few months, say even a couple of years, do you suddenly start going, that 12-year-old, yeah, I think that's where it's at? No, of course you don't. It's ridiculous. Not to mention all of the studies that I'm aware of. Anyway, no link between celibacy and abuse has been shown. It's just that simple. Not to mention, this has been a practice in the church for a good 800 years. So yeah, this is not a thing. That said, should the church look at the celibacy thing? And for the record, this is one of those things that people always want the church to change on. That actually could change. The Pope could literally wake up tomorrow and say, celibacy, I think we're done with that. I think we can have married priests. You can do that because it's not doctrine. It's not a thou shalt. It's a we've decided thou should. There's a big difference there. Church does not decree that it is impossible for a married man to be a priest. She simply says that we think it is best that a priest not have other obligations other than his flock. Plain and simple. And that goes back to a lot of writings of St. Paul. He strongly encourages celibacy. And even Jesus says, there are people who make themselves eunuchs for the kingdom. And the church says, you know what? Yeah. And we're going to limit the priesthood to people who feel that calling. If you don't join. Don't sign up for the priesthood. It seems relatively simple. It's not like the church ordains somebody a priest and says, oh, and by the way, you can never get married. What? I didn't know this. Give me a break. That's, again, all of that said, because this is a thing that can change. The one thing that changing it, that relaxing that discipline could do is open up the priesthood to a number of other men who would be fantastic priests. It could do that. Possibly, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm a dad. I've got a full-time job. I've got 6 kids. Yeah, I'm not interested. Sorry. But maybe there's others that would be. Maybe there are significant numbers that would be. Who knows? But it doesn't really solve the abuse problem at all. Another one is that people have been pointing to, both people within and outside of the church, is the church's bureaucracy, which, yes, the church has a lot of that, a lot of bureaucracy, down even to down to lay organizations like the Knights of Columbus. Lots of bureaucracy, lots of red tape. It's well, it's like it's like any large government or large business. There's just layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy in between me and the man at the top. And that now the way their church is structured, it's supposed to make it easier. It's supposed to create a system of accountability where a priest who is abusive or corrupt in some other fashion is held to account by his bishop. But obviously that's not what's been happening, because the bureaucracy can also be corrupted to be used to hide things. It can be used to obfuscate. It can be used to keep information away, in this case from the laity, or also, as we discussed in the previous episode in this series, keep information away from the Pope himself. If there are people you don't want to know certain things, it's fairly easy to make sure that you don't send a letter along. You send it only, you can say you sent it to the next office up the chain of command, but you sent it to the office, not to the person who actually runs it. You send it, it winds up going to a secretary. Maybe there are multiple secretaries. Maybe there are multiple officials who could possibly receive this. And you could, if you're connected, you can make sure that the right person gets it. So you could honestly say, oh, I sent it along. I sent it up the chain. But, oh, yeah, I sent it to the guy who's going to make sure it doesn't go anywhere else. Or, as we know, once you are high enough up in the bureaucracy, you can use it to make sure only people that are friendly to you and to your ways of thinking, that they move up the chain. And that's exactly that's exactly the kind of accusations have been made against Bishop McCarrick and various other people in that letter from Cardinal Vigano, whatever. And again, that's exactly the sort of thing that's been alleged. And also, it's been alleged for some time now that genuine, good Orthodox men have been kept out of a lot of seminaries or have left because of pressure from other elements within the church. So I'm actually about out of time here. So I'm going to get into that more next time. The further, more proximate causes of why this seems to be happening in the Catholic Church more than others. And there's two other things I'm going to be getting into. One is kind of the last significant reason, and the other is more of a bit of context that creates the seams. And anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Stick with us over the next couple of weeks as we go through this. There's continue to be more information that's been breaking. I don't plan on getting into any new information until I get everything else out that I want to say, unless of course something major drops. Then we'll talk about it more or less immediately. But until then, I'm going to wait until I'm done, see everything that comes out, and wrap up whatever developments happen to come across, and whatever will be the last video in this series. Currently, I'd have to say we're looking at a good 3-4 more, depending on if I could do a long one or if it has to be a lot of shorter ones like this. So again, thanks for tuning in. Follow us at Fighting Void on Twitter. And of course, you can always email Gmail at, fightingvoid@gmail.com. And until then, keep fighting the good fight, because somebody has to.